In today's fast-paced world, silence has become an endangered experience. Our lives are constantly flooded with the hum of notifications, the never-ending flow of conversations, and the restless chatter of our own thoughts. It feels as though silence has been pushed to the margins, a fleeting luxury in a world that thrives on noise. Yet, within this chaos lies a hidden treasure, a space where clarity, peace, and self-awareness can flourish. Buddhism, with its profound teachings, reminds us that silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is an active state of being, a sanctuary for the soul. Silence is not about retreating from life. It is about stepping into the present moment with intention and awareness. In silence, we pause. We listen, not just to the world around us, but to the whispers of our own hearts and minds. This simple act of listening has the power to transform how we navigate our daily challenges. Whether it's managing anger, resisting gossip, resolving conflict, or coping with suffering, what makes silence so powerful? Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh captures it beautifully. Silence is essential. We need silence just as much as we need air. Without it, our minds become cluttered, leaving little room for mindfulness or peace. In silence, we find the spaciousness to grow, to heal, and to connect with the deeper truths of life. It is within these quiet moments that we uncover the strength to face difficulties, the compassion to understand others, and the wisdom to make thoughtful choices. This video invites you to embark on a journey into the transformative power of silence. Together, we will explore 5 pivotal situations where practicing silence can make a profound difference in our lives. These lessons, rooted in Buddhist philosophy, are more than ancient wisdom. They are practical tools for modern living. By the end, you'll discover how silence, far from being a void, is a bridge to a more mindful, harmonious, and purposeful existence. So, take a deep breath, let the noise of the world fade into the background, and let's begin this exploration into the serenity and strength that only silence can provide. Part 1. Silence in the face of anger. Anger is a universal human experience, one that can feel all-consuming in the moment. It arises suddenly, fueled by our unmet desires, our aversion to discomfort, and our ignorance of life's impermanence. Buddhism recognizes anger as one of the 3 poisons, alongside greed and delusion, that keep us trapped in a cycle of suffering. Unlike other emotions that might pass without lasting impact, anger often leaves a trail of destruction. Words spoken in anger can wound deeply, sometimes irreparably. Actions fueled by anger can sever relationships and create regret that lingers for years. Yet, despite its destructive power, anger holds the potential to teach us, if we are willing to pause and listen. In moments of anger, our first impulse is often to act, whether through sharp words, raised voices, or reactive gestures. This instinct stems from a deeply ingrained belief that expressing anger will relieve it. However, Buddhist wisdom offers a counterintuitive yet profound approach: silence. Silence in the face of anger is not weakness or avoidance. It is an act of strength and wisdom. By choosing not to respond immediately, we create a pause, a sacred space where we can observe the emotion without being consumed by it. This pause is transformative. It allows us to step back and examine the roots of our anger. In many cases, anger is tied to our attachments, expectations of how things should be, or desires for control. When these attachments are threatened, anger arises as a defense mechanism. Similarly, anger often springs from aversion, a deep discomfort with situations or people that challenge our sense of ease. And underlying it all is ignorance, the inability to see life's impermanence and interconnectedness. These moments of silence offer us a chance to see these patterns clearly, to understand that our anger is less about the external trigger and more about our internal response. Buddhist teachings illustrate this dynamic through the story of the 2 arrows. Imagine being struck by an arrow, a sharp pain that represents life's inevitable challenges, such as disappointment, loss, or conflict. This first arrow is unavoidable. It is part of the human condition. But the suffering does not end there. The second arrow is self-inflicted, representing the pain we add to the situation through our reactions. This could be the anger that flares up, the harsh words we speak, or the grudges we carry. By choosing silence in moments of anger, we stop ourselves from firing that second arrow. We prevent unnecessary suffering and create space for healing. Silence in anger is not merely about suppressing emotion, but about transforming it. It begins with a single, intentional pause, a deep breath that interrupts the cycle of reactivity. This moment of stillness is where mindfulness takes root. Instead of being swept away by the intensity of our feelings, we anchor ourselves in the present. From this place of calm, we can reflect on essential questions. Why am I angry? What expectation or attachment is being challenged? What can this moment teach me about myself? These questions are not easy, but they are illuminating. Often, we find that our anger is tied to illusions of control or misunderstandings about others' intentions. Perhaps someone's words felt disrespectful, and our immediate reaction was to defend our pride. In silence, we might realize that their words were more a reflection of their own struggles than an attack on us. This shift in perspective can dissolve anger before it takes root, replacing it with compassion or even understanding. The practice of silence also benefits those around us. In moments of anger, our words and actions can ripple outward, affecting others in ways we may not intend. Choosing silence interrupts this cycle, preventing harm and preserving relationships. For example, during a tense exchange with a friend or family member, responding in anger often escalates the conflict, leaving both parties feeling hurt and defensive. But a silent pause creates an opening for the other person to reflect as well. It signals that we are choosing thoughtfulness over impulsivity, which can inspire a similar response in them. I recall a personal experience where silence and anger profoundly changed the outcome of a conflict. During a professional meeting, a colleague made a sharp critique of my work, and I felt the sting of their words immediately. My instinct was to retaliate, to defend myself with equally cutting remarks. Instead, I paused. I let the silence fill the space between us, using that moment to examine my feelings. Why did their critique hurt me so deeply? What was I clinging to? I realized that my attachment to being seen as competent and capable was the real source of my anger. When I eventually responded, it was with clarity and calm, and the conversation shifted from confrontation to constructive dialogue. That moment taught me that silence is not just a buffer. It is a bridge to understanding. Silence also prevents us from carrying the residue of anger long after the moment has passed. Anger, if left unchecked, can fester, turning into resentment that colors our thoughts and actions. This emotional residue can damage not only our relationships but also our inner peace. Silence acts as a cleanser, giving us the opportunity to process and release anger before it takes root. In this way, silence not only protects others from our anger but also protects us from ourselves. Moreover, silence in anger creates the conditions for compassion to grow. When we choose to pause instead of react, we gain the space to see the humanity in the person who has triggered our anger. Perhaps they acted out of their own pain, fear, or ignorance. Recognizing this does not excuse harmful behavior, but it does soften the edges of our anger, allowing us to respond with greater empathy. This practice aligns with the Buddhist principle of loving kindness, which encourages us to wish well even for those who challenge us. The ripple effects of practicing silence and anger extend beyond the immediate moment. It teaches us patience, deepens our self-awareness, and strengthens our emotional resilience. It also serves as a model for others. When we demonstrate the power of silence in heated situations, we inspire those around us to consider alternative ways of responding to conflict. Over time, this creates a culture of mindfulness and mutual respect, both within our personal circles and in the broader community. Ultimately, silence in anger is a practice of liberation. Anger binds us to cycles of reactivity and suffering, but silence breaks these chains. It frees us to respond to life's challenges with clarity, wisdom, and compassion. This does not mean suppressing or ignoring anger, but transforming it into a source of growth and understanding. By embracing silence, we reclaim our power, not the power to dominate or control, but the power to choose peace over conflict, understanding over judgment, and wisdom over impulse. In doing so, we not only heal ourselves but also contribute to a more harmonious world. Part 2. Silence in the face of gossip and slander. Words hold immense power in shaping the world around us. In Buddhist teachings, they are compared to seeds that, when sown, can either grow into flourishing trees of harmony or thorny bushes of discord. Gossip and slander, though often seen as trivial or harmless entertainment, are destructive forces that can unravel trust, sow negativity, and harm everyone involved. They create invisible wounds, damaging the reputation of the person being discussed, fostering negativity in the speaker, and influencing the listeners in ways that are often overlooked. The damage is not always immediate, but its ripple effects can poison relationships, communities, and even our own inner peace. Gossip often arises from negative emotions like envy, resentment, or insecurity. We might feel a fleeting sense of superiority when we discuss someone else's flaws or misfortunes, but this gratification is shallow and short-lived. Beneath the surface, gossip violates one of the core Buddhist principles, right speech. This teaching from the Noble Eightfold Path encourages us to speak only words that are truthful, kind, and beneficial. Words that fail to meet these criteria can harm not just others, but also our own spiritual growth. When we engage in gossip, we feed our inner negativity, reinforcing patterns of jealousy, judgment, and self-righteousness. Choosing silence when confronted with gossip is an act of great strength and resistance. It is easy to get swept up in the moment, to add a comment or laugh along to fit in. But silence creates a pause, a disruption in the cycle of negativity. It breaks the momentum of harmful speech and offers a chance for reflection, both for ourselves and for others. By refusing to participate, we not only protect ourselves from the karmic consequences of harmful speech, but also set an example that can inspire others to reconsider their words. The karmic implications of gossip are profound. In Buddhism, karma is not simply about punishment or reward. It is the natural outcome of our thoughts, words, and actions. Harmful speech plants seeds of discord that inevitably grow into suffering, both for others and for ourselves. When we gossip, we perpetuate cycles of harm that can return to us in ways we may not foresee. Silence, on the other hand, halts this cycle. It allows us to plant seeds of peace and integrity instead. Silence also acts as a mirror, encouraging those around us to reflect on their behavior. In a conversation where gossip is flowing freely, your choice to remain silent can create a subtle but powerful pause. It may prompt others to question why they are engaging in such talk. Are they speaking out of jealousy, anger, a need to feel included? Silence offers a moment of introspection that words often cannot. Over time, this can lead to a shift in group dynamics, fostering a culture of respect and kindness. Integrity is another key reason to choose silence in the face of gossip. Our words reflect our values, and by refusing to engage in harmful speech, we demonstrate a commitment to ethical behavior. This commitment not only strengthens our character, but also builds trust with those around us. People will come to see us as someone who values honesty and fairness, someone who can be trusted to protect their dignity even in their absence. Silence becomes a testament to our moral clarity and self-discipline. In a workplace setting, for example, it is not uncommon to encounter gossip about colleagues. Imagine hearing a rumor about a coworker that paints them in an unflattering light. The temptation to join in might arise, whether out of curiosity, camaraderie, or a desire to be part of the group. But choosing silence in such a moment does more than just protect the coworker's reputation. It also reinforces your own integrity. Over time, others will notice your restraint and may even begin to emulate it. In some cases, your silence might be the spark that inspires a shift away from harmful conversations altogether. Choosing silence also invites us to examine our own motivations. Why do we feel drawn to gossip in the first place? Is it a desire to belong, to feel superior, or to distract ourselves from our own insecurities? These questions are not easy to confront, but they are essential for personal growth. Silence provides the space to engage in this introspection. It allows us to recognize and address the underlying emotions that fuel our participation in gossip, whether it's envy, fear, or self-doubt. Reflecting on these motivations can be transformative. For example, you might realize that you gossip about others' shortcomings to deflect attention from your own perceived flaws. This awareness can lead to a shift in focus, from criticizing others to cultivating self-compassion and growth. By choosing silence, we begin to break the habit of harmful speech and replace it with practices that nurture our own well-being and the well-being of those around us. Silence does not mean passivity or indifference. It is an active choice to uphold the values of kindness and truthfulness. It is a refusal to perpetuate harm, even when it would be easier to go along with the crowd. In this way, silence becomes a powerful tool for transformation, both for ourselves and for the communities we are part of. In Buddhism, there is a profound understanding of the power of words to shape reality. Words can build bridges of connection or walls of division. Gossip and slander destroy. Silence preserves. By practicing silence in the face of gossip, we align ourselves with the principles of mindfulness and compassion, creating space for healing and understanding. Over time, this practice not only protects our own spiritual well-being, but also contributes to a more harmonious and respectful world. Part 3. Silence during conflict. Conflict is an inherent part of human relationships. No matter how harmonious a connection may seem, disagreements are bound to arise, whether with family members, friends, colleagues, or even strangers. These moments of tension often stem from differences in perspective, unmet expectations, or miscommunication. Yet, the way we navigate conflict can either deepen the divide or pave the way for reconciliation. In the heat of an argument, words are like sparks. They can ignite further discord or extinguish the flames of tension. Silence, when chosen mindfully, acts as a cooling bomb, bringing calm and clarity to situations that might otherwise spiral out of control. When emotions run high during a conflict, our instinct is often to react immediately. Harsh words may tumble out in defense of our position or to assert our point of view. These reactive responses are typically fueled by the ego's need to win or to feel justified. However, such words rarely resolve the issue. Instead, they add fuel to the fire, hardening the opposing sides and deepening the divide. Buddhism offers a different approach, the practice of silence as a means to pause, reflect, and respond with intention rather than impulse. Silence in moments of conflict is not about surrendering or suppressing your feelings. Instead, it is about creating a space to detach from the emotional charge of the moment. This detachment, rooted in the Buddhist principle of non-attachment, is key to transforming conflict into an opportunity for growth and understanding. Non-attachment teaches us to let go of ego-driven desires, such as the need to prove ourselves right or to assert dominance, and instead focus on what truly matters, preserving harmony and fostering mutual respect. In the context of conflict, silence serves multiple purposes. First, it allows us to step back from the intensity of the moment and observe our own emotions without judgment. By pausing, we can ask ourselves important questions. Why am I so triggered? What outcome am I hoping for? How can I approach this situation with compassion? This self-reflection helps us respond to the conflict rather than react to it, shifting the dynamic from one of opposition to one of resolution. Second, silence creates space for active listening, a practice often overlooked in the heat of an argument. When we are silent, we are not merely waiting for our turn to speak. We are genuinely listening to the other person's perspective. This kind of listening requires us to set aside our own agenda and focus fully on understanding the other person's emotions and needs. Often, conflict arises not from the issue itself, but from a sense of being unheard or misunderstood. By offering the gift of silence, we give the other person the opportunity to express themselves fully, which can de-escalate tensions and open the door to constructive dialogue. Active listening through silence also allows us to pick up on nuances that might otherwise go unnoticed: tone of voice, body language, or unspoken emotions. These cues can provide deeper insight into the root of the conflict, enabling us to respond with greater empathy. For example, someone's angry words might mask feelings of fear, frustration, or insecurity. When we listen beyond their words, we can address these underlying emotions rather than reacting to the surface-level expression of anger. In my own life, I recall a heated disagreement with a family member. Their words felt sharp and unjustified, and my initial impulse was to defend myself, to argue back and prove my point. But something within me urged me to pause. I chose silence, not out of resignation, but out of a desire to understand. As I listened, I realized their frustration was not truly directed at me. It was rooted in unrelated stress they were experiencing. My silence allowed me to see beyond their words and into their struggles. When I finally spoke, it was with empathy rather than defensiveness, and this shifted the entire tone of our interaction. The conflict dissolved, replaced by a meaningful conversation that strengthened our bond. That moment taught me that silence in conflict is not avoidance. It is an act of mindfulness and compassion. Silence also serves as a safeguard against escalation. In the heat of conflict, words spoken impulsively can cause irreparable harm, often far beyond what we intended. A single remark, spoken in anger, can linger in the other person's mind long after the argument has ended, creating emotional scars that take years to heal. Silence, by contrast, prevents us from saying things we might later regret. It allows us to choose our words carefully, ensuring they contribute to resolution rather than further discord. Moreover, silence interrupts the cycle of reactivity that often perpetuates conflict. In many disagreements, each person's response is a reaction to the others, creating a feedback loop of escalating tension. By choosing silence, we break this cycle. We create a pause in which emotions can settle, providing both parties with the clarity needed to approach the situation more thoughtfully. This pause is not just beneficial for the immediate conflict. It also sets a precedent for how future disagreements might be handled, fostering a culture of mindfulness and respect. It's important to note that silence in conflict does not mean ignoring the issue or avoiding difficult conversations. True resolution requires engagement and communication. Silence, in this context, is a tool, a momentary pause that allows us to approach the conversation with greater awareness and intention. Once we have reflected on our emotions and listened actively to the other person, we can speak from a place of calm and clarity. Our words, informed by silence, carry the potential to heal rather than harm. The power of silence during conflict lies in its ability to transform the dynamic from one of opposition to one of collaboration. By stepping away from the need to win or to be heard at all costs, we create space for mutual understanding and respect. This shift not only resolves the immediate conflict but also strengthens the relationship, fostering trust and goodwill. In the broader context of Buddhism, silence during conflict aligns with the principles of right speech and compassion. Right speech encourages us to use words that are truthful, kind, and beneficial. Silence helps us ensure that our words meet these criteria, even in moments of tension. Compassion, meanwhile, reminds us to approach others with empathy, even when we feel wronged or misunderstood. Silence provides the stillness we need to access these deeper values, enabling us to act in alignment with them. Ultimately, silence in conflict is not about suppressing your voice or giving up your perspective. It is about creating the conditions for a more mindful, compassionate exchange. It is a deliberate choice to prioritize connection over division, understanding over judgment, and resolution over reactivity. By embracing silence as a tool for navigating conflict, we not only transform the way we handle disagreements, but also contribute to a more harmonious and compassionate world. Part 4. Silence in witnessing the suffering of others. When someone close to us is suffering, the natural impulse is to reach for words of comfort, advice, or encouragement. We want to say something that will ease their pain, to assure them that everything will be okay. While these instincts come from a place of love and care, they can sometimes miss the mark. In Buddhism, there is a profound teaching about the power of silence in such moments. It reminds us that our presence, when offered without judgment or expectation, can be far more healing than even the most carefully chosen words. Silence in the face of another's suffering is not about withdrawing or remaining aloof. It is an act of compassionate presence. By choosing to sit in silence with someone who is hurting, we create a safe space where they can express their emotions freely, without fear of being judged or interrupted. This silence speaks volumes. It says, "I am here with you. I see your pain, and I am not afraid to bear witness to it." In this way, silence becomes an active offering, a way of holding space for another's suffering with tenderness and care. One of the most profound aspects of silence is its ability to facilitate deep listening. When we are silent, we are not distracted by our own need to respond or fix the situation. Instead, we can focus entirely on the other person, tuning into not only their words, but also their body language, tone of voice, and unspoken emotions. This kind of listening is rare and precious, as it allows the suffering individual to feel truly seen and heard. Often, what people need most in their pain is not advice or solutions, but the simple acknowledgement of their experience. Silence also prevents us from unintentionally minimizing or invalidating someone's pain. Words, no matter how well-intentioned, can sometimes fall short. Phrases like, "It's going to be okay," or "everything happens for a reason," might be meant to comfort, but they can come across as dismissive or superficial. In contrast, silence offers no such risks. It allows the person to process their emotions in their own way and at their own pace, free from external expectations. A powerful example of this came from a close friend who shared their experience of grief. After losing a loved one, they found themselves surrounded by well-meaning people offering condolences and advice. Yet, the most comforting interaction they recalled was with someone who simply sat beside them in silence. This person didn't try to fill the space with words or suggest ways to move forward. They simply stayed present, bearing witness to the depth of their grief. That silence, my friend said, felt more like love than any spoken words ever could. It reminded me that silence is not emptiness. It is filled with presence, understanding, and care. This approach aligns deeply with Buddhist teachings on compassion. In Buddhism, compassion is not just a feeling but an active desire to alleviate the suffering of others. However, this doesn't always mean taking action or offering solutions. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing we can do is to accompany someone in their pain without trying to change it. By doing so, we honor their experience and respect their autonomy. Silence also allows us to reflect on our own motivations. Why do we feel the need to speak when someone is suffering? Is it because we truly believe our words will help? Or is it because we are uncomfortable with their pain and want to ease our own discomfort? These moments of introspection can reveal a lot about ourselves and guide us toward more mindful and compassionate responses. Furthermore, silence can be a powerful way to foster connection. In a world where so much of our communication is filled with noise, both literal and metaphorical, choosing silence in a moment of vulnerability can feel like a profound act of intimacy. It shows the other person that we are willing to step into their world, however painful it may be, and simply be with them. Of course, this doesn't mean that words have no place in moments of suffering. There are times when a kind word or a thoughtful expression of support can be incredibly meaningful. However, Buddhism reminds us to be mindful of when silence might speak louder than words. It invites us to trust that our presence alone can be enough, that we don't need to fill every moment with explanations or assurances. In practice, this can be as simple as sitting beside someone who is grieving without feeling the need to say anything. It can mean holding a friend's hand as they process a difficult experience, or simply staying on the phone in silence with someone who needs company. These acts may seem small, but their impact can be profound. Silence in witnessing the suffering of others also fosters mutual growth. For the person who is hurting, it provides a space to process their emotions and begin to heal. For the one offering silence, it cultivates patience, humility, and the ability to hold space for others. It reminds us that we don't always need to have the answers, and that sometimes, the greatest gift we can give is simply our presence. Ultimately, silence in the face of suffering is an act of trust. It trusts in the resilience of the other person, in their ability to navigate their pain in their own way, and in their own time. It trusts in the power of presence to provide comfort and support, even without words. And it trusts in the profound connection that can arise when we choose to meet another's suffering with quiet compassion. In choosing silence, we offer not just a response to suffering but a recognition of it. We say, without words, that their pain matters, that it is seen, and that they are not alone. In this way, silence becomes a profound expression of love, a balm for the wounded heart, and a reminder of our shared humanity. Part 5. Silence in times of personal suffering. Suffering is an inescapable part of the human experience. Whether it comes in the form of loss, failure, heartbreak, or deep existential doubt, it touches us all. In the face of such pain, the world often encourages us to externalize, to share our burdens with others, seek advice, or find distractions. While these approaches have their place, Buddhism offers an alternative path, turning inward, into the quiet sanctuary of silence. In silence, we can process our emotions on our own terms, free from the need to explain or justify our feelings. This act of sitting with our suffering, acknowledging it without judgment, can be deeply transformative. Silence during times of personal suffering is not about suppressing pain or pretending it doesn't exist. On the contrary, it is about creating space to fully experience and understand it. When we are silent, we are no longer avoiding or escaping our feelings. Instead, we allow them to surface, giving ourselves permission to feel the full weight of our emotions. This may seem counterintuitive, even frightening, but it is in this brave confrontation with suffering that healing begins. In Buddhism, suffering is not seen as a punishment or a flaw, but as a profound teacher. It is a reminder of life's impermanence, of the inevitability of change, and of the interconnectedness of all things. These truths can be difficult to accept when we are in the midst of pain, but silence provides the clarity we need to explore them. In silence, we come to see that suffering, while intense, is not eternal. It ebbs and flows like waves on a shore, and its lessons, if we are open to them, can lead to profound growth. Silence also allows us to connect with our inner strength. Often, when we are suffering, we feel powerless, as though the pain is too great to bear. But in silence, we discover a deeper resilience within ourselves. This resilience is not about ignoring the pain, but about sitting with it, holding it gently, and recognizing that it does not define us. It is in these moments of quiet introspection that we begin to see our suffering not as a burden to be avoided, but as an integral part of our journey. I remember a time in my own life when silence became my refuge. It was during a period of deep personal loss, a time when the world felt heavy and fragmented. Well-meaning friends and family offered words of comfort, but none of them seemed to reach the core of my pain. It was only when I turned to silence, through meditation and journaling, that I began to find clarity. Each day, I would sit quietly, allowing my thoughts and emotions to rise and fall without interference. At first, this practice felt unbearable. The pain was raw and overwhelming. But over time, I noticed something remarkable. The silence was not empty. It was filled with understanding, with strength, and with the faint glimmer of healing. Through these practices, I learned to approach my suffering with curiosity rather than resistance. I asked myself questions. What is this pain teaching me? What attachments am I holding onto that make this hurt so deeply? These reflections didn't erase the pain, but they transformed my relationship with it. Instead of seeing my suffering as an enemy, I began to see it as a guide, leading me toward greater self-awareness and compassion. Silence also provided me with a much-needed break from the external pressures to move on or stay strong. In the quiet, there was no need to perform strength or to explain my feelings to others. There was only the raw truth of my experience, and the freedom to face it at my own pace. This unfiltered encounter with my pain was both humbling and empowering. It taught me that I could hold my suffering without being consumed by it, and that within the stillness of silence, there was room for healing to unfold. One of the most profound lessons I learned in silence was the impermanence of suffering. Buddhism teaches that all things, including pain, are transient. This does not mean that suffering is insignificant or easily dismissed. Rather, it is a reminder that pain, like all experiences, will pass. In silence, I could feel this truth in a way that words could never convey. Each wave of grief eventually gave way to a moment of peace. And in those moments, I found the strength to keep going. Silence also allowed me to reconnect with the broader rhythms of life. When we are suffering, it is easy to feel isolated, as though our pain is unique and insurmountable. But in the quiet, I began to notice the interconnectedness of my experience with the world around me. The trees continued to sway, the sun continued to rise, and the world moved forward, indifferent to my pain yet offering its quiet companionship. This realization was both humbling and comforting. It reminded me that suffering is not a solitary experience but a shared aspect of being human. In silence, we also create the conditions for self-compassion to flourish. Often, when we are hurting, we are our own harshest critics. We judge ourselves for feeling weak or for not healing fast enough. But silence invites us to let go of these judgments and to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend. It is in this space of self-compassion that true healing takes root. Practicing silence during times of personal suffering is not always easy. It requires courage to sit with pain rather than distract ourselves from it. It requires patience to wait for insights to emerge rather than forcing solutions. But the rewards are profound. In silence, we find not only a refuge from the noise of the world, but also a path to greater understanding, resilience, and peace. Ultimately, silence in times of suffering is an act of trust in ourselves, in the process of healing, and in the impermanence of pain. It is a reminder that we do not need to have all the answers, that it is okay to simply be with our pain without trying to fix it. And it is through this quiet acceptance that we begin to transform our suffering into a source of strength, wisdom, and compassion. Kettle 1. The teachings of Buddhism illuminate the transformative power of silence in our lives. Silence is not mere stillness or absence of sound. It is a deliberate act of presence, a profound choice that allows us to engage with life more mindfully and compassionately. As we reflect on the 5 crucial moments where silence becomes our ally, we see how it can shape our interactions, heal our wounds, and deepen our understanding. In moments of anger, silence acts as a shield, protecting our relationships from the heat of impulsive words. It offers us the clarity to respond with wisdom rather than react with hostility. When confronted with gossip, silence becomes a stand for integrity, breaking cycles of negativity and setting an example of ethical living. During conflicts, silence de-escalates tensions, creating space for empathy and resolution. In witnessing the suffering of others, silence speaks volumes. It offers compassion, respect, and the assurance that we are present with them in their pain. And in our own personal suffering, silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where healing and self-compassion can take root. These practices show that silence is far from indifference. It is an active and empowering choice, one that aligns us with the principles of mindfulness, non-attachment, and loving kindness. Silence is a form of presence that allows us to connect more deeply with ourselves and others, to observe without judgment, and to respond with intention. It is through silence that we cultivate the emotional resilience and compassion needed to navigate life's complexities. As Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, we need silence just as much as we need air. In silence, we find the space to breathe, to reflect, and to grow. We create room for understanding to flourish, for wounds to heal, and for connections to deepen. Silence does not solve every problem, but it gives us the clarity and strength to face them with grace. Imagine a life where silence is not feared but embraced, a life where moments of quiet allow us to truly listen, not only to others, but to our own hearts. This is the life that the practice of silence invites us into, one of mindfulness, harmony, and authenticity. When we integrate the wisdom of silence into our daily routines, we align ourselves with the natural rhythm of life, finding balance in the midst of chaos and peace within ourselves. Let us carry this practice forward, not just in moments of need, but as a daily habit. Whether it's pausing before responding in anger, choosing not to engage in harmful gossip, listening deeply during conflict, sitting with someone's pain, or turning inward during our own struggles. Let silence be our guide. By doing so, we move closer to the ideals of mindfulness and compassion, creating a ripple effect that touches not only our own lives but the lives of those around us. In embracing silence, we uncover the path to inner peace and harmonious relationships. We begin to live with greater authenticity, free from the noise of reactivity and distraction. Silence is not just a practice, it is a way of being, a reminder of the profound wisdom that exists in the stillness. May we allow silence to shape our actions, our words, and our hearts, guiding us toward a more fulfilled and compassionate life. We sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Your presence is the greatest motivation for Mindful Glow to continue creating meaningful content, spreading the light of mindfulness and compassion. We hope that today's reflections have brought you peace and inspiration to embrace these profound values in your daily life. If this video resonated with you, we kindly invite you to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Every interaction from you not only helps our channel grow, but also amplifies these positive messages to reach more people. Let's build a community with Mindful Glow, where mindfulness, compassion, and peace are nurtured and shared. Once again, we sincerely thank you and look forward to continuing this journey with you as we explore the depths of inner silence and wisdom. Wishing you peace and happiness always.